I came to drop off my late best friend's keys. His widow opened the door. He said you'd come. Stay. I never thought a small ring of keys could weigh so much. They sat in my jacket pocket for nearly 3 weeks after my best friend Daniel died. 3 weeks of carrying them around. 3 weeks of finding excuses not to make the trip. 3 weeks of pretending I wasn't terrified of facing his widow. Daniel and I had been friends since we were 10 years old. We grew up on the same street, survived high school together, and stood beside each other through every major moment of life. When he married Emma, I was his best man. When my father died, Daniel was the first person at my door. He was more than a friend. He was family. Then, one rainy Tuesday, a drunk driver ran a red light, and suddenly he was gone. The funeral felt unreal. Everyone cried. Everyone shared stories. Everyone talked about what a wonderful husband and father he had been. But all I could think was that none of this made sense. Daniel was supposed to grow old. We were supposed to be old men sitting on porches complaining about our backs. Instead, I was standing beside a casket. After the funeral, Emma moved through life like a ghost. At least that's what people told me. I couldn't bring myself to visit. Every time I thought about knocking on her door, guilt crushed me, because I had been the one who convinced Daniel to take that road home. We had gone fishing that day. At the last minute, I suggested a different route, the route where the accident happened. Nobody blamed me. The police said the drunk driver was responsible. Emma never blamed me, but I blamed myself. Every day. Eventually I realized I couldn't avoid her forever. The keys belonged to Daniel's old workshop behind their house. She needed them. So one Saturday afternoon, I drove there. The house looked exactly the same. The white fence, the flower beds, the porch swing Daniel had built himself. Yet everything felt different, like the soul had been removed from the place. I walked to the front door and knocked. A few seconds later, it opened. Emma stood there. She looked tired. Not just physically tired. The kind of tired grief creates. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me and smiled sadly. "Hi, Ryan." I swallowed. "Hi." I held out the keys. "I should have brought these sooner." She stared at them but didn't take them immediately. Instead, she said something that made my heart stop. "He said you'd come." I blinked. "What?" She stepped aside. "Come in." Confused, I followed her. The house was quiet. Too quiet. We sat at the kitchen table. Emma poured coffee. My hands shook slightly. Finally, I asked, "What did you mean?" "He said I'd come." Emma disappeared briefly into another room. When she returned, she carried a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front. Ryan. My chest tightened. "What's that?" She placed it in front of me. "Daniel wrote it 6 months ago." I stared at the envelope. "What?" "He made several letters." My mind raced. Emma nodded. "He said if anything ever happened to him, there were people who needed to hear certain things." I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Daniel's handwriting. Daniel's words. My vision blurred immediately. "Ryan, if you're reading this, then something happened to me. And if I know you, you're carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you." I laughed through tears, because he knew me that well. The letter continued. "The accident wasn't your fault. Nothing that happened was your fault. You need to stop carrying responsibilities that belong to life itself. Some things happen because they happen, not because someone failed, not because someone made the wrong choice, just because life is unfair sometimes." I stopped reading. My eyes filled with tears. Emma quietly sat beside me. I continued. "There's another reason I wrote this. If I'm gone, Emma will pretend she's okay. She won't ask for help. She'll isolate herself. And you'll probably stay away because you'll think you're respecting her space. Don't. She'll need someone, not a replacement for me, Just someone who cares. Stay. The last word was underlined. Stay. The same word Emma had spoken at the door. I couldn't speak. The room felt heavy with memories. After several minutes, Emma finally broke the silence. He knew both of us too well. I laughed weakly. Yeah. For the first time since Daniel's death, we talked. Really talked. Not about funeral arrangements. Not about paperwork. About him. We shared stories, embarrassing moments, old adventures, the stupid things Daniel used to say. Hours passed, and for the first time both of us smiled without feeling guilty. Before leaving, I walked toward the door. Emma stopped me. Ryan? I turned. Yeah? Thank you for coming. I nodded. I should have come sooner. She shook her head. You came when you were ready. That night, I reread Daniel's letter a dozen times, and for the first time, I considered the possibility that maybe he was right. Maybe the accident wasn't my fault. Maybe grief had convinced me otherwise. Over the next several months, I followed his final request. I stayed. Not every day, not constantly, just enough. I helped fix things around the house, picked up groceries, attended Lily's soccer games, Daniel's 8-year-old daughter. At first she barely spoke. Then one day she handed me a drawing. It showed 3 stick figures. Her, Emma, and me. Above them she had written, family. I nearly cried. Life slowly found a rhythm again. Not the old rhythm. That was gone forever. A new one built around healing instead of surviving. Then, nearly a year after Daniel's death, Emma invited me to dinner. Nothing unusual. We'd had dinner before, but something felt different. The conversation flowed easily. The laughter came naturally. For the first time, there wasn't sadness sitting between us. The sun was setting. Emma looked at me, then quietly said, I think he'd be happy. I knew exactly who she meant. I nodded. So do I. Months later, our friendship became something more. Neither of us planned it. Neither of us expected it. And for a long time, we resisted it. Because it felt complicated. Because grief makes everything complicated. But eventually we realized something important. Loving someone new doesn't mean loving someone old less. Daniel wasn't being replaced. He couldn't be. He would always be part of our story. The man who brought us together. The man who taught us loyalty. The man whose final act of friendship was making sure 2 broken people didn't face the future alone. 2 years later, Emma and I stood together, in the same backyard where Daniel once grilled burgers and told terrible jokes. Lily stood beside us holding flowers. The evening air was warm, and above us, hanging from the workshop wall, was a framed copy of Daniel's letter. People asked if it was strange, if it was awkward, if it was difficult. Sometimes. But mostly, it was beautiful. Because love doesn't end when a person dies. It changes shape. It becomes memory. Ants. Presence. A voice that still whispers when you need it most. As the stars appeared overhead, I looked at the letter one final time, at the single underlined word that changed everything. Stay. And for once in my life, I was grateful that I listened.